A lot has changed in the wide receiver landscape of the NFL in the last couple of weeks since our last wide receiver ranking. So we're going to give you our updated rankings so you can best know how to value your wide receivers in your dynasty leagues. We're based this off of just normal PPR leagues, not much else to say about wide receivers. So without further ado, our S tier number one wide receiver is Jamar Chase. Jamar Chase tied to Joe Burrow, just an absolutely elite pairing. Chase hasn't put it fully together to have that top tier wide receiver one finish yet, like overall wide receiver one, but we do absolutely think that's in his range of outcomes. He's just in the best possible scenario, being tied to one of the best quarterbacks in the league and being one of the best talents in the league. He's going to be elite for years to come, and he's still so young. So Jamar Chase, wide receiver one. Dak, who's a wide receiver two.
Yeah, up next we've got Justin Jefferson, who arguably is the best wide receiver in the NFL. He just got J.J. McCarthy this offseason, lost Kirk Cousins, but it's not Sam Darnold starting at quarterback like it was looking like in March, so much better. He's so talented. It's not going to matter really who's throwing him the football. I'm really excited for Justin Jefferson. Not much more to say.
Yeah, so our next player is going to be CeeDee Lamb, coming off a wide receiver one overall finish of the year, just had an absolute monster that we were waiting for quite a long time because CeeDee Lamb was always so hyped and then kind of disappointed, but last year finally broke out. It was an absolute stud. Dak Prescott was slinging him the rock. And not much change in that offense. They didn't really bring in any wide receiver talent besides, it's just basically CeeDee Lamb, right? So he's going to probably have another wide receiver, top five wide receiver year. He's being drafted as wide receiver one in redraft leagues right now. So CeeDee Lamb just going to be an absolute stud. These top three guys are really pretty interchangeable in our minds. So just an absolute stud. Dak, who's our last wide receiver in this tier?
Yeah, we're going to call our shot here. We have Marvin Harrison in this tier with the other three guys. Incredible prospect coming out of Ohio State and then gets paired up with Kyler Murray. They're going to throw the football a ton, and Marvin Harrison's going to be the top target getter in that offense. We really believe in him as a prospect. We think that's going to translate on the field with Kyler Murray. We're just so excited for him. We have him in this tier, and we think he's going to show why he belongs to be in this tier come September. So really excited for Marvin Harrison Jr., who starts off the next year.
Start off next year, we have another just absolute stud. It's Amon-Ra St. Brown. Jared Goff just signed a massive extension. Jared Goff loves Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Amon-Ra St. Brown loves Jared Goff. They're going to continue to have the just absolute monster seasons together where Amon-Ra catches the ball like 8 to 10 times a game. He just gets fed that ball in a PPR leagues. He's going to score so many fantasy points. He's great after the catch. They didn't really add in one in that room. It's pretty much just him and Sam Laporta and those running backs. So he's got plenty of targets to go around. He's going to continue to be an absolute monster. He's not as high as the other guys because he's not as talented, I'd say, as a football player as those Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson. He's more like that slot yak guy, but he is a stud still. So we have him at the top of the A tier.
Yeah. So up next, we've got Puka Nacua. If you never knew what college they went to or where they were drafted, and you just looked at their pure NFL production, Puka Nacua would probably be the number one guy on this list. The only reason he isn't, I guess, is because it's still bias that we have that he was a late draft pick and he went to BYU, but he's still really good. He had the best rookie receiver season we've ever seen in NFL history, and we expect that he's going to be putting up this production for years to come in that McVay offense. We're really excited for Puka Nacua, and honestly, if he produces like he did this past year, he could end up in that S tier. He's still really young, and you can't deny 2 years of that type of production.
Yeah, the only thing that's really holding him back in my eyes too is the fact that Stafford's old.
Yeah.
Straight up. So like Stafford could retire in the next 2 years, and that might put question marks around Puka Nakua's value. It's the only reason why he's a little bit lower down. Speaking of question marks about the quarterback long term, we got Garrett Wilson next. Garrett Wilson has not had that wide receiver one finish yet, but we think it's absolutely coming this next year. Aaron Rodgers is going to feed Garrett Wilson. I wouldn't be surprised if he's a top three wide receiver this next year. He's going to be an absolute monster in that offense, and I'm so excited to watch it. Garrett Wilson has been a fantastic player in the NFL so far. He's proven he can even produce with terrible quarterback play, worst quarterback play in the league, and he still has been a great producer in fantasy points. So just really excited for him. Once again, long term, just like Puka Nacua, not sure how it's going to look when Rodgers retires in probably a couple years, but Garrett Wilson's still a fantastic player. How about our next tier, Dak?
Yeah, this next guy has no questions at the quarterback position. That's going to be A.J. Brown. He's got Jalen Hurts throwing the football. They both have big extensions tied there for multiple years. He's been a great producer ever since he got over to Philly, and we think that's going to continue. The only reason why he's not up there with the Garrett Wilsons, Amon-Ra's, is just because of his age. He's been really durable the last couple of years since he got to Philly, which you couldn't say in Tennessee. But I think the age is just holding him back from being there. Nonetheless, he's still going to be producing like a wide receiver one for years to come. We're really excited for A.J. Brown in that offense.
Yeah, he's definitely the oldest guy so far on this list, but just an absolute stud. Our next player is going to be Malik Neighbors, drafted super highly by the New York Giants. He is the only weapon they have in that entire offense. We don't love the quarterback situation there. Daniel Jones is so mid, but Dable's a good coach. We think he's going to get Neighbors involved. Neighbors is going to be able to just he might see the most targets in the freaking league next year because the Giants are going to lose so many games and they're going to keep slinging the rock to Malik Neighbors. He has all the upside in the world. He's fantastic, fantastic talent coming out of college. Only thing holding him back, I'd say, is the Giants, right? But the Giants can easily get a new quarterback in the coming years. Maybe Daniel Jones can be serviceable, maybe, but you can't ignore the talent with Malik Neighbors. He's an absolute stud. So, Dak, who's next?
Next, we've got Chris Olave. This is a guy who's, again, being held back by quarterback play. Derek Carr is not good at all. And he has that big contract just kind of stuck there in New Orleans. So we don't think the situation is going to get any better for Chris Olave. He still produced as a high-end wide receiver, too, since he got to New Orleans. So he's still young. He's still a great prospect. We're still excited for Chris Olave. We just wish they had a better quarterback. But he's still going to produce. And eventually he could get a good quarterback in a few years. And then it all pays off for Chris Olave.
Yeah, and even without like the good quarterback play, Chris Olave still produced as like a nice wide receiver too in the past couple years. So still a nice player with Derek Carr. Rounding off this year, we have Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill is kind of like a Christian McCaffrey at the wide receiver position, just going to be an absolute stud until he finally falls off and is worth nothing. Tyreek Hill, wide receiver 2 last year. Previous year was also really high finish. I'm not exactly sure, but just an absolute stud. He's going to score 20 points per game easily with Tua. Just that system. Like, he gets so many targets, and he's so explosive and so good at getting open. He's just an absolute stud. The only thing holding him back is the fact that he's old, right? He's just old, but he's going to have 2 more years probably of elite production, and that's worth a good amount in our fantasy leagues because he can easily win you your league. He's just that good. He's one of like 2 players, him and McCaffrey, that can just win you the league outright. Dak, start us off on our next tier.
Yeah, next year we've got Drake London. This is a guy who has not even produced like a wide receiver 3 the first 2 years he's been in the league, but he just got Kirk Cousins. And one thing about Kirk Cousins is that he throws the ball to his wide receivers, and his wide receivers will produce. So we're really excited for Drake London. He could follow the Justin Jeffersons, Adam Thielen, Stephon Diggs that Cousins has played with in recent years. And he's going to get fed the ball a ton in that offense. He has the talent too. He was drafted over Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, all those guys in that draft class a couple years ago. So he's definitely got the talent. Now that Kirk Cousins is there, it's wheels up for Drake London. We're really excited to see what he does now offense this year. Who do we got next in this list?
So next we're gonna have DJ Moore, who just got a massive quarterback upgrade with Caleb Williams going to the Bears. DJ Moore kind of like that AJ Brown age, a little bit older, so he's going to take a little bit of a knock for that. Coming off like a top 6 wide receiver finish year, just an absolute amazing year for DJ Moore. And now he has the best quarterback play he's ever had in his entire career by a country mile. He's also going to have the best competition for targets he's ever seen in his career. He's going to have Keenan Allen next to him, who, might get hurt. And he's going to have a rookie Rome Odunze, who's another stud. We're going to see later on this list. But besides that, DJ Moore is going to have another nice year. We're projecting, hopefully, a wide receiver 1 year. I'd imagine probably wide receiver 1 year. The only thing that could stop him is maybe Odunze is just a really nice rookie, and Keenan Allen just demands a lot of targets. But I still think he's going to be a nice stud player this year.
So next we've got Nico Collins. He had a really exciting year since CJ Stroud got there into that offense. We expect that's going to continue. Nico Collins is still relatively young. So long as Stroud is there throwing the football, it's going to be really good for Nico Collins. They did bring in Stephon Diggs this past offseason, and then with Tank Dell still there, there's a ton of target competition, but we think Diggs probably moves on after a year. So long-term, Nico Collins is a great investment. He's the best receiver in that offense, and tied with Stroud, you can't really ask for anything better. Who we got next on this list?
Our next player is going to be Brandon Ayuk. Ayuk's someone we were selling earlier in the offseason when he was valued as like wide receiver 9 for some people. We have him wide receiver 15 here, but he's a nice wide receiver. He's a very good wide receiver. There's question marks about where he's going to be playing in the next couple years. Right now it's San Fran, obviously. They did draft Ricky Pearsall, and they're looking to trade one of either him or Deebo Samuel. We don't know who it's going to be. We don't know where he's going to end up playing. But if he's on the Niners, he's going to be another wide receiver 1, probably like a low wide receiver 1, high wide receiver 2. Had a fantastic year last year, hyper efficient year, which might see some regression there. But either way, he's still going to be a very nice player. And he has the upside to also get traded to a team like the Bills. And if he gets traded to a team like the Bills, where's Ayuk's value? Like top 8, automatically, he'd skyrocket. He also has the opportunity to get traded to a team like the Giants and then get tanking value. So you never know. But nice player to have on your team, Ayuk. Who's next, Dak?
Yeah, next we've got Rome Odunze, who was drafted with Caleb Williams in this Bears draft class. Those guys are going to create instant chemistry with each other, and Odunze could be the wide receiver one in a couple years in that offense. And Caleb Williams, wide receiver one, is going to produce no matter what. So we're really excited for Rome Odunze. He was a top 10 pick, which means he has the talent. So we're just really excited for him. He could be higher on this list, honestly. It's just the fact that he's in that room with DJ Moore and Keenan Allen that's holding him back. He could have a JSN year one, where he doesn't have the best yards, best targets, all that stuff. But we think after year one, he's going to be really, really good.
Yeah, and unlike JSN, whose value did take a hit, maybe even unfairly, I think Adunja is going to hold his value. People know that he has a built-in like bad year one if he doesn't ball out because Keenan Allen and DJ Moore ball out. So I really like Adunja, especially at cost.
Yeah.
Our next person is going to be Devontae Smith. Smith just signed a nice contract extension with the Eagles. He's tied to Jalen Hurts, but he's also therefore tied to A.J. Brown, which does hurt his fantasy value just because A.J. Brown is the alpha in that offense. He's one of the best wide receivers in the league, and that really hurts Smitty's upside. But we know what we're getting with Devontae Smith, and he's going to be a nice wide receiver too for years to come. He's still very young. He's still going to continue to produce, but he just lacks that upside that we see with our top players. So just a nice wide receiver to have, but lacking that upside. So Dak, who's next?
Next, we've got Jalen Waddle. He was a wide receiver one a couple years ago and then had a down year this year. Once you got Tyreek Hill in that offense, it's going to be tough to get the targets that you're looking for. But eventually, Tyreek Hill will move on and Waddle will become the number one. It's just a few years away. So until then, we have to have him here. He's always going to be wide receiver two. And we can't really expect more from him, but still a really good player. You want him on your dynasty teams. He'll be at best on a championship level team. He's probably your third best wide receiver, which, it's not bad. He's just a solid receiver. This is where we're going to have him. Dalton, who do you got next?
So our next player in the next tier is going to be Michael Pittman Jr. of the Colts. The Colts wide receiver room is getting kind of crowded, right? They have Josh Downs there, who had a nice, quiet rookie year. They also drafted A.D. Mitchell, who's a wide receiver we really liked going into the draft. He didn't get drafted as high as we thought, so maybe he's not as good of a prospect as we thought, but we do think that he's still going to be a good wide receiver. And that could take away targets from Michael Pittman, and unfortunately, that's what Michael Pittman thrives on. He's an absolute target hog and a PPR machine. He catches the ball like 9 times a game, right? And we could see those targets go down, especially with Richardson playing quarterback. We just don't know how many times they're going to try to throw the ball with Jonathan Taylor and Richardson in the backfield. So Pittman might see a little bit of a hit in terms of how many times he gets targeted in the game, but we still like him as a player. Great player. Just maybe a little bit of the capped upside, like I talked about with Devontae Smith, concerning how crowded the room is and how run heavy that offense could be. So Dak, who we got next?
Next, we've got T. Higgins. He's wide receiver two right now with the Cincinnati Bengals. He requested a trade. It's yet to be seen if he stays there this year or he moves on. We're really not sure. But we're going to have him here. He's behind Jamar Chase. So, again, like Waddle, he's got that capped upside. But being in the Bengals offense, that's not a bad situation to be in at all if you're the wide receiver two. He's still going to produce probably like a wide receiver two. This is where he's going to be. Depending on if he gets traded somewhere else, his value could fluctuate. But for now, we're going to have him here. Who do we got next?
The next person will be George Pickens. Deontay Johnson left the Steelers and really left George Pickens to be the alpha wide receiver in that offense, and we're very excited for that. We're big George Pickens fans. We think he's a fantastic NFL talent. The only problem is that the quarterback play there last year was terrible. Kenny Pickett was awful. Everyone there was awful. And they brought in Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. We expect Russ to be a starter, and Russ just isn't really that good, but maybe he can supply just one wide receiver to have a good year. Pickens had like 1,100 yards last year, so I think he could definitely duplicate that again at least. Arthur Smith, new offensive coordinator, doesn't like throwing the ball a whole lot, so there are questions there with Pickens, but we do like him as the talent. We think maybe not this year, but in a coming year when the Steelers can finally get a real quarterback that's not named Russell Wilson or Justin Fields, that Pickens could have a nice jump and maybe even be a wide receiver one. So, Dak, who's our last player in this tier?
Yeah, last player in this tier, we've got Brian Thomas. He was drafted to the Jaguars this offseason. He's probably going to take Calvin Ridley's role over as the number one in that offense, and he's got Trevor Lawrence throwing him the football, so definitely not a bad thing at all. There is some target competition in that offense with Evan Ingram and Christian Kirk, but we think Lawrence and Brian Thomas are going to grow together, and we think that's going to be a really good combo for years to come, so this is where we're going to have them. We got next tier.
So, starting off our last tier, we have Xavier Worthy. You might notice we haven't said a certain other Chiefs wide receiver's name yet, but he's coming soon. Worthy got nice draft capital in the back of the first round by the Chiefs. They traded up to get him, so they obviously like him. Has blazing speed, right? He's a very good player. He's tied to Mahomes now, and that just has immense upside written all over it. We have seen in the NFL that these players that have some incredible speed numbers, like don't tend to pan out, but maybe Worthy's the exception. There is going to be like a nice opportunity for him in the beginning of the year. Rice is definitely going to get suspended. We know that for a fact now. And Worthy's going to have the opportunity to take over as the wide receiver one. He only has Marquise Brown to compete with, and Marquise Brown is pretty mid. So Worthy's has all the opportunity in the world. Let's see if he can pounce on it. Dakota, who's next?
Yeah, so next, you mentioned him. We've got Rashee Rice. Right now on Keep Your Cut, I think he's in like the 50s. Shouldn't be there at all. We're going to have him at 24. You might get mad about it, but this is where we have him. And honestly, if there wasn't any of this nonsense going on, I'd probably have him over Devontae Smith and Roma Dunze. I think he's a top 16 receiver talent in Dynasty, if not for all of this. He's tied to Patrick Mahomes for the foreseeable future. Travis Kelce is getting older. Hollywood Brown, you mentioned him, not really great. Xavier Worthy is a nice player, but I think Worthy's going to have a defined role of being the over-the-top deep threat, while Rice is getting all those short underneath targets and then creating good yak, which he did last year. I'm really excited for Rashee Rice. We just need to get past all this stuff that's been happening off the field. I think you get probably an 8-game suspension, and then he's good to go. And by this time next year, if you send a third for him and everyone's just like taking that, like you're going to be really happy about it. And no one's going to remember all this stuff. And he's going to be a top 16 receiver in Dynasty. So really excited for Rashee Rice. This is where we're going to have him.
And we're still buying him, right?
Still buying
We're
him.
still buying
Don't care.
So our next player is going to be Tank Dell. Tank Dell had a couple really big games last year with CJ Stroud. Obviously going to be tied to CJ Stroud as well. CJ Stroud's one of the best young quarterbacks in the league, and Tank Dell looked at times to be one of the best young wide receivers in the league. He's also 160 pounds, so there's got both sides of the spectrum there. He got hurt in a pretty freak play. Like you wouldn't think they usually get hurt in that play, but because he's so small, he did get hurt, and we're worried about his durability long term because he is so small. However, we do think he's still a good player and hopefully will, stay healthy and be good in the future. They did bring in Stephon Diggs, so that wide receiver room is getting quite crowded. So maybe this year is not Tank Dell's year to truly, truly break out, but that also maybe keeps him healthy with just staying off the field a little bit more. So yeah, Tank Dell, nice player to have. Capped upside this year because they have Diggs and Nico, but still a good player. Who's next?
Next guy, he has no size issues at all. This is DK Metcalf. He's the number one in a crowded offense in Seattle. JSN, Tyler Lockett there. Not the best quarterback throwing him the football, and Geno Smith. DK, is what he is at this point. He's going to have those incredible boom weeks, and then he's going to have weeks where he's non-existent. So this is where he's going to be in our rankings. He's getting a little bit older as well. Not a really big concern. He is what he is at this point. Who do we got next?
So our next player going from small to big, back to small, Jordan Addison here. Jordan Addison, we really do like him as an NFL player. We think he's a very good wide receiver. He just has a lot to overcome now. He's got Justin Jefferson in front of him. He's got T.J. Hawkinson there. They lost Kirk Cousins, who is personally my favorite person to be throwing the ball to my wide receivers because he just loves feeding NFL wide receivers so many points. And then they got J.J. McCarthy, who is not the worst quarterback in the NFL, but it's yet to be seen really how good he's going to be. Hopefully he can make Jordan Addison into Devontae Smith. That's what we kind of want Jordan Addison to be at that point, is just an elite wide receiver 2 in the NFL. And if he's that, then he'll be elite wide receiver 2 on your fantasy teams, right? And that's really his upside. He also has the downside that maybe if J.J. McCarthy isn't that good, that Jordan Addison could really be the one who suffers. We think Justin Jefferson will be able to carve out his own value with J.J. McCarthy, but Addison doesn't have that talent level that Justin Jefferson has to be able to create his own fantasy points. So we're a little worried about that, but still a nice player to have. Dak, who's next?
Next, we've got Ladd McConkey, who landed into a great spot in the LA Chargers. There's no competition there at all. Quentin Johnston sucks. He's not going to get any better in his second year. And then who else they got? Like Josh Palmer. Like it's Ladd McConkey and it's no one else. And Justin Herbert's going to throw the ball to him a ton. They're probably going to run the ball a lot this year, bringing in Jim Harbaugh and Greg Roman to be the coaches. But still, there's no target competition at all. So it can't be a bad thing for Ladd McConkey. He can play on the inside, can play on the outside. He's got a ton of versatility. We like them as a prospect, so we think he's going to have a good rookie year in LA. We got rounding out this last year.
So our last player is going to be Zay Flowers. You know what you're getting with Zay Flowers after only 1 year. He's tied to Lamar Jackson, and that offense is just not that pretty. They don't throw the ball that much, which kind of sucks for Zay Flowers. But he's a decent NFL talent. He's proven to be a good NFL wide receiver. Once again, the problem is just the Baltimore Ravens, Lamar Jackson, just don't throw the ball that much. And he likes to throw the ball to all the different wide receivers. Mark Andrews is still there, obviously. Targets are going to be few and far between for Zay Flowers, maybe getting like 5 to 6 a game. And it's just hard to be a, wide receiver 1, let alone wide receiver 2 on those numbers. But can't ignore the fact that he is a good wide receiver, right? And he's going to score fantasy points. That offense is going to score fantasy points. So this is a nice player to have, Zay Flowers, but nothing too special. So I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.